All right, hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Chase Thomas Podcast, where I'm still the aforementioned Chase Thomas, coming to you live from Knoxville, Tennessee. It's hard to say everything School HQ tonight, Matt Green. I'm feeling a little bit down. The Tennessee Volunteers, as we were recording this on a Tuesday, late on a Tuesday evening, eliminated by the LSU Tigers 5-0, and the Vols finished fifth in this college baseball season overall. The last team eliminated before the Final Four here. Great season. Went way farther than they should have to this point. Great pitching throughout. Should be better next year. Probably even maybe a potentially better rotation. Definitely a better lineup. But when you're hitting 200-ish from super regionals on, it's really, really hard to keep winning baseball games. And, hey, that's baseball. When you're everything School HQ, that's how it works. You're just in it for all the big moments month after month, and one of these times it will go the Vols' way. And unfortunately for the 2023 Tennessee baseball team, it was not this summer, but hey, that's why football season right around the corner. Rowing, who knows? Lady softball next year.
Football season, softball, basketball, just another sport that they can be pretty good at. And that's there's something to be said for that. It's no national championships, but they are definitely competitive in every sport.
Well,
at least this past year in football. It's been a while since they've been competitive in football.
I think they were competitive 2 years ago under Heupel. They weren't great, but they were competitive. They were up on Georgia after the first
bowl
quarter.
game, I guess, is however we're using the word. I feel like they're like actual upper tier program in most sports, but it's been a while since they were an upper tier football team.
And they're there
2022,
right now.
We'll see what happens moving forward.
I think things are looking up. I think things are looking up all across the board here. Jordan Burns, 4-star out of Pace Academy, committing to the Vols today. So the recruiting calendar, man, it is just this summer. It's just every day you're monitoring and seeing who OVs and how all this is working, and Florida filling up the boat, South Carolina filling up the boat, Georgia trying to fill up the boat. It's just it's kind of wild that this summer is now just when you want to get the majority of your class done. And every day you're just kind of watching and waiting to see how things are going to go. Boo Carter, big 4-star safety, commits over the weekend. Michigan made a strong push for him. So Tennessee class top 10 right now in 247, and that's just where you want to be. You're not going to be 4th, 5th, 3rd. Catch Georgia in that regard. If you're Tennessee, you just want to be in that top 10 blue chip ratio range year over year. So feeling good there.
Florida's the one that's been killing it on the recruiting trail lately.
Yeah.
It goes to show you, really, it's just this is why this recruiting calendar is just so out of whack, because everything has just been sped up so much. So teams are having 15, 16 commits now in the summer, and you're expected to sign basically everybody in December. And so if you're firing your coach, whatever's going on, I feel like it puts you 2 classes behind almost.
Yeah, that's why early signing day should be August, and then the late signing day is right after the season, and then it's done. December is the last of the Mohicans type of deal. That makes the most sense.
It feels like that's how the players almost see it. That it feels like a lot of guys want to get this done before their senior year starts. And so I don't know, every year it just seems to we get juniors, sophomores, it just gets accelerated. This guy who reclassified, I'm blanking on his name.
What is it? Ole Miss quarterback?
Committed to Florida. Now he's from 2025
to 2023. Yeah, it's wild.
That is just insane. I'm not even sure how that's possible. But he finished a 5.34 GPA or something. I know I wasn't a good student, but I don't even know how these numbers exist. But yeah, it's crazy. He finished high school classes as a freshman. A real TJ Henderson we got on our hands.
Yeah, that wasn't me. That was not me, Matt Green. Well, Fellow University of North Georgia alumni Matt Green, that is the voice you hear on that other end of this very show down there in Tequila, Georgia. Matt Green, good evening, sir. How are you?
How's it going, man? I was, watching the Bravos tonight. They got a solid win. I won't lie. I was checking on Tennessee, just peeping over there, making sure that the Tigers were taking care of business, and can't have any Tennessee national championships. So, but yeah, other than that, man, not much. Just hanging out, doing my thing.
Matt Olson bombs. I will say, with the Braves, I cannot stand the yellow patch. It's all I see. I don't know if you're used to it yet, the yellow ad on the corner of the jersey.
Ronald Acuna got me used to just the bright yellow with the Braves uniform. But, yeah, it really is. It's out there. And you see it's on different sleeves. Like for right-handed hitters, it's on one side. A left-handed hitters, it's on like they know what they're doing.
It's terrible. It just like I'm okay with ads on uniforms. It's just where we are across the sports and Major League Baseball, NBA. It'll come with NFL, but like I think it should be required that you have to match the uniforms. Like it has to blend in with the uniform. Now the NBA does that. Like all the NBA ads, they all match the actual uniform. But when you have this weird looking yellow black on this Atlanta Braves uniform, it's all you see. Like even the Mets, their current one, it's blue. So it matches and all like either you match or you can't be the ad. Like I don't know why.
And there's it's like some logos it's like can pull it off. It's like this logo is just like a big ass yellow rectangle on the sleeve of the jersey. Like it's not just like a letter or something. Mm-hmm. But yeah, it is pretty bad, but I guess, watching Premier League and stuff through the years, it's like you've kind of become numb to it, I guess.
Yeah. That might be the case, Matt Green. Matt Green, how many days are we until college football as the good folks are listening to this on their morning commute here on a Wednesday?
We are 73 days away from college football, and in honor of 73 days, we went to the FCS level on this one. Most receiving touchdowns in the history of FCS football. You gotta guess for that.
Terrell Owens?
That
or
would
Jerry
be
Rice?
Correct. That would be. I've lost track of the Super Bowl numbers, but whatever Super Bowl MVP Cooper Kupp. 73 career receiving touchdowns at Eastern Washington. Yeah, he absolutely tore up the FCS level. 6,400 yards, like 70. His most touchdowns was actually his freshman year. He had 21 touchdowns, but yeah, 73 for his career. 4-time All-American. Like that's just insane company. So yeah, Cooper Kupp, 73 receiving touchdowns in college.
I never would have guessed that. I would have guessed on the yardage, like he ate up the yardage. It's kind of funny, like he's kind of the modern Jerry Rice anyway, just with the way he plays and over the middle and just a sure-handed catch guy and just he's just going to rack up the
2013 Jerry Rice
catches.
Award winner, as a matter of fact.
Well, see, there you go. Like Cooper Kupp is legit, but I would never have guessed that he actually was the touchdown leader. What was he? Eastern Washington? Did you say?
Yeah.
Yeah. Are they the red field? I feel like they were always the red field.
Yeah, the red field.
What would be the worst color field for a college football game to view for you? Is it the blue or is it the red?
Red's got to be up there. Red's a way more harsh color. Like the Boise State thing, other than the fact like Boise State's cheating and they're wearing all blue uniforms on a blue field, like I feel like the blue is like an easy color to look at. Like the red, I don't know how that wouldn't hurt your eyes after a while. Somebody, who is it? Is it Eastern Michigan? Has like the gray field or something like that?
Coastal Carolina. They have the teal.
They got the teal.
Yeah.
I want to say someone's that's like green and gray. I feel like there's a gray field out there. Something weird.
Yellow's got to be the worst. There's no way you could do a yellow. No one can do a yellow.
Yeah, yellow would be terrible. I guess also I'm not sure about the gray thing because you'd have to have white hash marks, and I'm not sure how you pull that off. But yeah, that's why you could never do yellow. But I don't know. I'm torn on the like the novelty of Boise State and the fact that like are they actually cheating? Is this not against the rules?
I'm actually kind of surprised in 2023 that these schools are still allowed to do that. I'm surprised it's not uniform across the board where it's like, hey, that was a cool gimmick when college football wasn't that big, but now it's big and there's so many dollars involved now that like, the blue field, the gimmicky field colors have to go. Like we can't do this anymore.
And I was correct, by the way. Rynerson Stadium, Eastern Michigan. They have a gray field. It's like a solid, like, not charcoal, but like a darker gray. Yeah,
Charlie Batch coming through.
Green end zone and like a gray field.
That's like the only Eastern Michigan guy I know. Who else was in Eastern Michigan?
Eastern Michigan, I can think of Earl Boykins. That's the only. I don't think I can think of a football Eastern Michigan.
God, I have no recollection of this gray field at all. This doesn't look that bad though. It just looks like you're watching like an old timey game.
That wouldn't be bad to look at. Like for
bad.
4 quarters, like the red, I couldn't handle that.
No, the red, I couldn't do it. Well, there you go, Matt Green. It's funny because you just never know when news is going to break, when things are going to happen. And after we recorded the pod last Tuesday night for the Wednesday folks, of course, Wednesday, the schedule release comes out and all that, and for the SEC for 2024. And we had a week, though, which is the plus side to this, is we had a week to digest and review it, think about it, look at everybody's schedule, and get our thoughts together here. So let's hit the 2024 SEC schedule reactions portion of this very program, sir. My first question to you, the best schedule for success in 2024 is for who in your mind?
I would probably say, looking at, for one, these schedules are just awesome. And the event of the schedule release was just incredible. Like, why can't we do that like every year? Like, that would just that would be amazing. So I don't know. The biggest thing is I don't know how they're going to like continue this in 2025 and everything. I just don't know how they're going to keep so many of these rivalries that they did keep. Like we were talking about, just ones like Tennessee, Florida, and Georgia, Tennessee, that like, or even like a Florida LSU that could be like what am I trying to say? They're going to die from this, right? Those rivalries aren't going to last. So I was glad to see, at least for 2024, they're not really sure what they're going to do in 2025. So for one, all of these schedules are just so good. Like there's not going to be a team they're like, oh, their schedule is easy, their schedule is way too hard. Like, everyone's basically going to be playing a gauntlet. I think the SEC might be geniuses. Like Greg Sankey might be a genius for this whole thing, because there was a lot of ridicule the SEC got for keeping it at 8 games. But because there is kind of an upper tier and a lower tier to the SEC, and let's be honest, a lot of the lower tier is in the SEC East. Probably the bottom 3 or 4 programs historically are probably in the SEC East. Now with no divisions, you actually see, like, if you're playing, everyone's playing everybody, like everyone's going to have a gauntlet. And then you're going to see how amazing this is, and then they're going to give them a whole lot more money to play a 9th game, and they're just going to finesse it perfectly. But all the way back to your question of who's got the easiest run, I think Texas A&M has a manageable schedule. Like, if you look at on the road, a lot of it depends on what happens with a couple of these programs. But like their road schedule that year, Auburn and Florida right now, like those are bottom of the SEC type teams.
Yeah.
They could easily be top 3 or 4 SEC teams by 2024. So it's a real wild card. But Auburn and Florida right now aren't that tough considering where you got to go. It's really A&M's schedule is venues over actual teams. Because you look at Auburn, Florida, Mississippi State, and South Carolina, that's pretty manageable when you look at all these other schedules. But Jordan Hare, Ben Hill Griffin, why am I forgetting? Williams-Brice and Davis-Wade Stadium, like all of those have like their own certain like, I mean, it's the SEC, right? So they all have, these are all insane venues, but those are 4 of the louder stadiums in this conference. And that's almost more the X factor than I feel like a manageable road schedule.
I also would mention their 2024 schedule. Ross Bjork, the AD at A&M, got what he wanted, which was when Texas joined the conference when they first played, that it would be played at A&M. And that's what they got. That's what they got. So you get LSU and Texas at home in 2024. And like you said, Auburn and Florida, like that's not a big road test really for them either. Like
there'll be massive games for sure.
I mean, A&M, I think you could make the very, very easy. I mean, you could throw in South Carolina and Mississippi State there. Like, you don't, and then the biggest thing here, guess who they don't play in 2024? The two best teams in the conference. Like, Alabama and Georgia are not on A&M's schedule. Isn't it kind of funny that after all of this, the one certainty it felt like as college football and SEC fans, we thought the 2024 SEC schedule would have is A&M and Georgia, with Georgia going to A&M for the first time since A&M's been in the conference. And, of course, Georgia is going to Texas before they're going to A&M.
Do we need to look into this deeper? Is there some sort of conspiracy of, like, a restraining order? Someone isn't allowed. Kirby Smart not allowed in the state of Texas. Like, is there? Yeah. Do we need to dig deeper here? Like, it's insane that now they've been in the conference for. This will be the 13th year or so in the conference, and still no Georgia at A&M. We've had A&M at Georgia at least one time, but yeah, it's crazy that. And another thing I was disappointed with the schedule was I felt like Texas got off easy. As a newcomer in the SEC, I don't feel like they were just given a gauntlet.
Make the case. Because I don't know if I agree with this. Why do you think Texas got off easy?
Well, for one. To start with, I think Georgia. Well, we'll get to that. I think Florida and Texas are the only two teams in the whole conference that have 3 true road games.
Florida, we'll get to. I have some strong thoughts on Florida.
Yeah, Florida. It's not like their schedule's easy or anything, but Florida and Texas are the only teams with 3 true road games because they're the road team in neutral site games. But so they get Florida and Georgia at home. Kentucky and Mississippi State are the other two. Like. Those, as far as obviously Georgia and Florida are really big time opponents, but they do get those at home. The road schedule is Arkansas and A&M and then Vanderbilt. So it's like you're only really going to Arkansas and A&M, and then obviously Oklahoma is going to be a 50-50 split. So I feel like Texas got a pretty manageable to get a huge team like Georgia year one. And to get that game at home, I wish they would have given them more of a gauntlet. Like, welcome to the SEC, guys. Like, this is what it's going to be.
Well, it felt like one of the two would get the gauntlet, and I think Oklahoma got more of the gauntlet than Texas. I would agree on that front. Like, Oklahoma's looks pretty brutal here by and large. And we'll get to the gauntlets and who it hurt more. But, I mean, Texas that year, I don't know if people realize, they have to go to Michigan in 2024 too. It's not like they have a murderer's row here. So it's not like it could have been worse, but like, hey, you still got Oklahoma, which is good. You got to go to Arkansas. You get Florida at home, which is nice. You get Georgia at home, which is a big win. Kentucky, take it or leave it. But you're at A&M, at Vandy. That's a great like early road game. Like to get Vandy on the calendar is good for them too. I don't know. This doesn't. It could have gone a lot worse. So I agree with you on that front. It could have been significantly more arduous for the Horns to this point, but I think it's year one, and like you said at the top of the thing, with this rotation and getting rid of divisions and where we're going with the scheduling, every year it's going to be a gauntlet for everybody. Like it's not going to be a cupcake for any. You're not going to be able to hide anymore in this conference. But with that being said, do you know who my team was? Who I think are the biggest winners here in the 2024 schedule?
Who's that?
The Arkansas Razorbacks.
Yeah.
The Hawgs, I think, actually have the easiest schedule of anyone in the SEC in 2024. I think if you want to buy some Hog stock, you want to buy it for 2024. If Arkansas is going to make a move with Sam Pittman in this group, 2024 is the year because you get an unbelievable amount of breaks here. You get, like, just look at this. You get A&M at home. You get LSU at home. Ole Miss at home, Tennessee at home, Texas at home. Your road games in the SEC that year, at Mississippi State, winnable. At Auburn, winnable. At Mizzou, winnable. But yeah, like that's it. It's not bad. Like Arkansas got a very, very good draw, and I think if you're looking at early like 2024, like who do you think could have a sneaky 10-2? Compete for the top of the SEC in November, and you're like, who's the third team? Like that third team that's just hanging around that you're like, oh, could they make the playoff as like a at-large SEC team? Arkansas, because it's the first year of the playoff, the expanded playoff in 2024. if I had to do like an SEC dark horse at large team right now for 2024, I think it's the Hawgs for me.
Yeah, I mean, you notice what the two teams we both named have in common, right?
What's that?
Arkansas and Texas A&M are the only two teams in the entire SEC that don't play Georgia or Alabama.
Yeah.
So it's 2024. LSU and Tennessee could easily be the two best teams in the SEC, and things happen. But I think it's a safe assumption that Georgia and Alabama will still be powerhouses. And if you just go through the entire, conference, and everyone has at least one of them. There's a couple of those teams that the Auburns and Tennessees. I think maybe Ole Miss. No, not Ole Miss, but a couple of them that have both on the schedule.
Matt Green, what about on the flip side here? Who do you think got the toughest schedule, and why is it the Florida Gators here?
You thought Florida was the toughest? I think Florida's overall schedule, like once you add in their non-conference.
Okay, so you're saying just conference schedule. That's fair. So who do you think actually got the toughest conference schedule?
mean, I will. We can go into Florida, though, because you might be right. I mean, Georgia, obviously, and Jacksonville, and at Tennessee and at Texas. That's definitely difficult. And then LSU
Hold on.
and
Also,
A&M.
sidebar on the Florida-Georgia thing. If Jacksonville, the Jaguars, are going to be redoing the stadium and playing in Daytona for a couple of years during this time span, why would you not just do the home and home in between this? Are they going to play in Daytona and wherever? Are they going to move wherever?
They are definitely. I think that there's no way they play in Daytona. I think that Atlanta, if would probably more likely than Daytona if they went neutral site.
2 years in a row?
No, I think it's definitely going to go home and home. If for the whatever, if it's just for a 2-year period, if it's like guaranteed that the next 10 years are going to be back in Jacksonville, I would guarantee that if it was 2 years, they'd go home and home like they did back
that's what
in.
It looks like. It looks like it's going
like
to be
94, 95, I think.
Yeah.
93, 94, maybe.
Sorry, sidebar. I was curious about that when I'm looking at the 2024 schedule. I'm like, what happens if the Jaguars stadium is under renovation? You can't play.
No, and speaking of Jacksonville, I think Jacksonville is like very much on the table looking at this schedule. Like I think that's one of like the potential like victims here is Georgia fans were promised like, hey, we're going 8 conference games. Like home schedule is going to get way better. And you look at this home schedule and it's Auburn and Tennessee. It's like, well, yeah, that's the only 2 games we've had on our schedule for most years is Auburn and Tennessee. So with that Jacksonville game, you only getting a third home game some years in the SEC, I think that's like holding on for dear life. Whereas if you have a 9-game conference schedule, you got those 4 home games, and some years you got 5 home games. I think you're willing to give up that Jacksonville game every once in a while, or every year. But I think with the 3 home games, like that doesn't sit right with you. Just 3. I mean, obviously they'll have 3 or 4, maybe 4 or more out of conference, but like in 2024, Georgia specifically has Clemson in Atlanta. So that's another game that's not going to be a home game. Georgia Tech, off the top of my head, even number, Georgia Tech would be a home game. But so it's like a 5-6 home games in a 12-game season. That doesn't sit well with season ticket holders. So
I wonder, what do you think? Do you think UF Georgia happens in Athens in 2024?
If that's the year that Jacksonville starts the renovations, I guess it could. I'm not sure. I think they've already.
I know they agreed to it, but like the Jaguars are closing the stadium. Like I don't know if they're.
So it might be 25, 26 that they actually. Because I thought they already agreed to something like a couple years that were guaranteed it was going to be in Jacksonville, but I could be wrong. But no. But going back to Florida, like their schedule is tough, but I feel like having just the 3 true road games, that's getting LSU, A&M, Ole Miss, and Kentucky at home. I think that's it's not the worst. But then you add Florida State, Miami, and Central Florida into it, and it's like that's kind of that's a brutal schedule. Like you look at that schedule, and like I think Samford is like the one cupcake they have on the schedule. It's like, is Central Florida like the second worst team on the entire schedule that season? Like That's unheard of territory for a college football team. Like, you usually have 2 or 3 built-in wins. One of them is usually Vanderbilt, maybe a Missouri in there for an SEC East team. But yeah, this schedule, they don't have any Vanderbilt, Missouri, or a South Carolina on there this year, which all may have been. Did all of those teams beat Florida last year?
I mean, a lot of them did.
South Carolina. No, Florida blasted South Carolina,
yes,
right?
Because that was it where we're like, oh, South Carolina's, and then they reeled off 2 straight.
And I can't remember Florida, Missouri off the top of my head, but did Florida win that game, or look it up?
I think Florida
dead
beat
air.
Mizzou. Yeah, I think Florida beat Missouri. Off the top of my head, I think they did.
I'll look it up.
I know they lost to Vanderbilt. They blasted them. They lost to Kentucky. Who lost to Tennessee? Was it the first time?
Florida 24-17.
Yeah. Okay. That's what I thought. Well, there you go. Mine, I think, is Oklahoma. I think Oklahoma, Matt Green. It's gonna be a murderer's row here, I think, for the Sooners in the SEC front. The hype will return. Is obviously the big one here for Oklahoma, but you look at it. You still get Texas. You have to go to Auburn. You got to go to LSU at Mizzou. It's fine. Who cares? But, like, you get Alabama in this draw. So getting Alabama, LSU, Tennessee, Texas, Ole Miss on the road as well. I just look at this and I'm like, this is 6-6, 7-5 territory for me if I'm looking at this Oklahoma schedule. Like, Heupel's gonna be looking for blood coming into Norman for that one, and I think they'll be better, especially with Nico in the fold there. But Texas just blasted you 49-0 this past year. Auburn will be even better in year 2 under Hugh Freeze and what he's got cooking there. At LSU is gonna be a bloodbath. Even you get Alabama at home, good luck. Ole Miss at Ole Miss, that's no cakewalk. I think Oklahoma actually got the worst schedule of anyone in 2024. I think Florida got the worst as a whole with UCF and Florida State being in the fold. But I think in terms of just SEC schedule, I look at this and I'm like, Oklahoma, you are in trouble. Sell the Oklahoma stock in 2024 for me. Maybe just sell all of it under the Brent Venables area. Just sell it all.
Yeah, it's definitely tough. I think that's why I put Georgia and Oklahoma up there because they're the only 2 teams that have just 3 true home games. Mm-hmm. And then you have having to go at LSU and at Auburn. That's brutal. And obviously they do get Alabama at home, which for some reason Georgia didn't get Alabama at home. I don't know, SEC office, what that's about. 2020, Georgia went to Tuscaloosa. Now they're going to Tuscaloosa for a second straight matchup. Don't understand it.
Well, I think Bama fans are probably annoyed that they didn't get – because it was a COVID game, so it wasn't full capacity. And I remember at the time that kind of sucked that it wasn't a full capacity environment. So this time you could spin it that way, where we get a full capacity Bama crowd for that one.
That's fair. But yeah, Oklahoma, and I don't know if you remember, I think Missouri and Texas A&M, they both got home games to start off. Like Georgia at home was Missouri's first game in the SEC, and I want to say Florida at home was Texas A&M's first game. So they gave them like a marquee opponent. So I'm curious to like who Texas and Oklahoma get as that very first SEC game, like Oklahoma at Alabama at Oklahoma for like your very first SEC game, like that. That feels like a welcome to the SEC. You got to play Alabama first game. Like I hope they do that.
That would be funny. I mean, it just, yeah, I think.
And I mean, you could give Texas, Georgia, I guess, first game too.
I mean, it wouldn't surprise me. You're doing Texas, Alabama pretty early anyway. Like, why not just throw them to the Wolves right away? Welcome to the SEC. It's better. Hey, a lot of eyeballs, be exciting. Why not, Matt Green?
I'm honestly, I'm going to call that right now. I think those are going to be like week 2, week 3, like early SEC games of Georgia. It's going to be their very first SEC game is going to be Alabama at Oklahoma and Georgia at Texas. Calling that right now.
Okay. last one on the schedule. What's the most underrated to you that you were perusing of all of them? What do you think is the most fascinating or interesting to you of all the schedules?
Oh man, the most fascinating is probably just looking at some of these, because I think we all know the SEC West has just been so much better than the SEC East from top to bottom, that the middle of the road SEC East teams, or honestly, I guess middle to bottom SEC East teams, is what I'm really like most curious to see. Like two teams I looked at over the last 6 years. Auburn is 44-32. Kentucky is 47-29. Like, Kentucky has been a quote unquote better team than Auburn the last the last 6 years. But I think if Auburn is playing Kentucky's schedule over the last 6 years, they probably have 10 more wins than Kentucky has with it. Like, I think we're really going to see how different the divisions really were. Like, I don't think you're going to see Georgia now lose a bunch of games because they're playing more SEC West teams. But in terms of, like, not having Vanderbilt to boost your schedule, like, Kentucky's a great example to me, in South Carolina, that, like, some of those years you wonder, South Carolina wins 7-8 games, like what they would have done if they don't have those games versus a Missouri, versus a Vanderbilt. Like, if you're actually having to play Alabama now, you're having to play LSU, because I think in the same way, like Arkansas and Ole Miss Auburn are now kind of winners. Like, Auburn's never going to escape it because they schedule competitively at a conference, and they're going to get Alabama and Georgia every year. But like, seeing Vanderbilt, seeing Kentucky on Auburn's schedule, you got to be like, oh man, this is nice to not play the entire gauntlet of the SEC.
Yeah, and I wonder too, like, I mean, just teams that, like, really you look at it and you're like, oh, you have no chance of ever even sniffing, like Mizzou, Kentucky, Vanderbilt, obviously, Miss State. You just look around and you're like, oh man, I don't ever see the path of you getting through this gauntlet and making the SEC title game. Like, there are so many cross-off teams year over year where I'm like, you just won't have. There's just too much has to go right. Like, too much has to go right to see it. And I don't know.
And it felt like one of those things was always the schedule. It's like, oh, they get a year where they don't, a Wisconsin, Iowa type thing. Yeah. Oh, they don't play any of the good teams from the Big Ten East.
That's like, all over. You're playing a gauntlet every year now.
Yeah, there is no, like, oh, well, they didn't play this, they didn't play that. Like, everyone's playing everyone, or not quite. But the biggest thing I worry about is just some sort of divisional tiebreaker or championship tiebreaker. Is with only playing 8 games, it feels like that's a little bit higher. That, you know, who knows what the outcome is if we got a couple 10-2 teams at the top of the SEC.
That's fair, Matt Green. Let's transition here. I got a couple fun. I want to start this little exercise. Which is more likely game I have here for this off-season edition here in late June on the full ride. Matt Green, so which is more likely? Speaking of the SEC, we'll stay in the SEC here. The Vols win the East in 2023, or Arkansas finishes last in the West in 2023? What do you think is actually more likely?
I think Arkansas finishing last in the West is way more likely than Tennessee winning the division. I do.
Why?
Because I don't think this is the year for Tennessee personally. And so I don't see a path to Tennessee winning the East this year, whereas I see a path of A&M being really good, of Alabama, LSU obviously being great, Hugh Freeze and Auburn being better than you expect, Lane Kiffin and Ole Miss just not being terrible. I feel like I almost expect Arkansas or Mississippi State to be the ones that are down there in the bottom. So it's partly I just think Georgia just looks better than Tennessee right now, but I think it's also, I'm not sure how Arkansas finishes in the top half of the SEC West.
Well, it's funny. I think the path is KJ Jefferson's healthy for a full year, and he's the best quarterback in the conference. Like, there is a path for that. Like, we've seen the best of KJ is one of the best quarterbacks in the SEC. Like, the best version of him. If he's able to stay healthy, he's obvious. Like, veteran quarterbacks win in this league. Like when you've been around for a while, like that helps. He's obviously a new system, so that's a big part of it. Sam Pittman had to change both coordinators, and Danny Enos is in there. It's going to be a lot more of a ground and pound group than what we saw with Kendall Bryles. So there's a big shift in how they're going to play and run the football and use their hog mollies up front and all that. New DC, I think his name's Travis Williams, I want to say. But Barry Odom obviously moving on to UNLV. But the Arkansas defense wasn't great this past year, NFL guys. But you look at it and you're like, if there's an improvement there, KJ's healthy, there's a path. I think their running game is going to be really good. They have a lot of talented backs there. I think they'll be good in that spot. I think for me, it's just to bet, like when I was thinking about this question, it's like the East is so wrapped up, and the reason I had like posed it this way was just that like it's all Tennessee has to get through is Georgia in this situation, right? Like it's just Georgia. Like they're not really worried about Kentucky. They're not really worried about South Carolina. They're not really worried about Mizzou or Florida, whoever.
I was about to say, you're not going to name the Gators? You're being disrespectful right now.
Vegas is being disrespectful. They are the ones with the 5.5 betting under coming into the year. Like Vegas has them as the second worst team coming into the college football season this year. Like that's not me. That's just Vegas and bettors looking at this roster and betting on Graham Mertz in this group not being able to win a lot of football games this year. That's just, I mean, Florida I don't think will be good. So, with all that being said, it's just like Tennessee, it might just take, you get Georgia in Knoxville. Like if Joe Milton is playing like a top 5 quarterback in the country, does some stuff that Hendon couldn't do, where he just does more stuff out of just the schematics and the style, where Hendon was just Hendon did so many things well. But if Joe is able to play outside of structure and is able to do things when the offensive line crumbles against the next Jalen Carter and the Georgia defensive line group, and is able to do stuff to keep plays open, is he hard to bring down? Like one of the things I saw up close and in person with Tennessee Florida last year was that like the reason Florida was in that game was because Anthony Richardson was impossible to bring down. Like his lower half was just gigantic. He just had like these 2 tree trunks that were planted into Neyland Stadium, where Tennessee was getting home. They just couldn't bring him down. So he's keeping drives alive, plays alive, and Florida had a chance to win last play of the game. I think there's a path. I'm not saying they're identical in Milton and Richardson, but I think throughout the year you're going to see a lot of like all the physical tools. He obviously has the best arm in the sport. Huge. Has actually lost weight this offseason to get a little bit faster. But like all the intangible stuff, like all the physical tools, there will not be a more physical toolsy guy this group. So it's like if he put it all together, you already had the best offense in college football last year. You were top 10 the year before. Like, I don't know. There's a path to like getting Georgia at home, and maybe the quarterback doesn't work out. Maybe there is a slight blip with Mike Bobo. Maybe Carson Beck stinks and has a rough go of it in Athens, or maybe they have to, Georgia bounces back and forth between different quarterbacks and they're more susceptible on that side of the ball. I'm not betting on it, but there's a path. There's like a 5% chance that Georgia's quarterback room is unsettled and kind of a mess. We saw it a couple years ago. They figured it out down the stretch, but we saw 2 years ago really that it took a while for Stetson to take the reins and get comfortable, and for them to move through the rest of their schedule. I think with Arkansas in the West, when I was thinking about like which is the more likely option, I think the Vols winning the East is more likely, because I think Arkansas's got a steady floor. Like I don't see Pittman just falling off a cliff there and having a season from hell, where they're still a talented group. They did well in the portal. If KJ plays 10 games, I just don't see this group being the worst team in the division. I think that would be really, really hard for me to forecast. But I'm also looking around, like you said, Mississippi State never finishes last. Like you can have all the questions you want about Zach Arnett. They're always going to be right there in the middle somehow. They just sneak into the middle of the pack in the West year over year. Auburn, like, I don't know.
This year with like you said, with Arnett, it feels a little different around Mississippi State. But yeah, they're never as bad as you kind of most people expect them to be.
It might sound weird. I think it's going to be Auburn, but I think it will be a good last place finish. Does that make sense? Like I think Auburn will have an exciting last place team in the West. I think they'll win some games they shouldn't. Probably 7-5. And
see, but 7-5 is usually not last place. There's usually a team that misses a bowl game. Like A&M missed a bowl game last year, right? 5-7.
Yeah.
So it's possible that the last place is a 6-6 team and they go bowling or something. But I just the KJ Jefferson point, like it's possible that he's the best quarterback in the SEC and Arkansas is competing for the SEC West. Like that's definitely possible. I feel like they were not nearly as good of a team last year, I feel like, as they were in 2021. Like they seemed to really take a step back, and they also lost some of that good personnel from 2022. So I don't know. They still have KJ Jefferson, they still have Raheem Sanders, but the offense should be maybe more what Sam Pittman wants to do, like you said, just ground and pound. But I don't know that they have like a set floor, because Auburn, you just never know what's going to happen with Auburn. And I swear it's like the Cam Rising thing. Like he was overrated at one point, but then once people started piling on, I bought the stock low, and I was like, you know what? This guy's not as bad as people say. Texas A&M, like I feel like I'm buying the Texas A&M stock. The Petrino Jimbo thing, like it might just be crazy enough to work. Like I don't know. Like the more I think about it, like they're always the team that like just gets too much hype, but and rarely lives up to it. Like I feel like if someone told me that about Texas A&M, like I'm not gonna die on a hill arguing against it. Right? They probably have not lived up to the hype more times than not. But I don't know. This talent, like that recruiting class they brought in was like the highest ranked class ever for a reason. Like these guys are going to be sophomores. We saw some of those true freshmen shine like last year. Like they got those guys at several different levels of both sides of the ball. Like I don't know. A&M is just, not to get off an A&M tangent, but they're just another team that I feel like is going to be a competitor in the West. That it's hard for me to see Arkansas up there near the top. And like most people they probably think LSU is going to be the SEC Media Day pick over Alabama, honestly.
That's a good question. I don't know. I feel like LSU will be the media pick for the West.
Yeah, that's what I said.
Oh, I thought you were saying A&M over LSU.
No, yeah, I'm saying LSU over Alabama. Like that'll be the kind of surprising thing, because it's Alabama basically every year. So it's like you got LSU, Alabama, maybe A&M up there. Auburn, the ultimate wild card, like Ole Miss, Lane Kiffin, Ole Miss. They're not recruiting at the level that they should. Like they could end up in last place in the SEC.
They're
West.
probably the sneaky favorite to me, where everything goes wrong. All the different quarterbacks they
sneaky favorite to finish last.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah,
I think a season from hell from A&M.
Everyone loves Lane Kiffin, but that team. It's not as sturdy of a foundation as it necessarily should be.
DC, they might have a terrible defense if the quarterback doesn't work. And you could see it. I could see it.
Yeah, I mean they were 6-6 a year ago, so they could be a game worse and miss a bowl game.
I could see it. USC's defense vastly improves, or Iowa's offense vastly improves next season. What do you think is more likely in 2023, Matt Green?
Definitely USC's defense improving.
Wow, no belief in the contract restructure for Brian Ferentz, where he has to score a certain amount of points a game to keep his
27 points per game? Is that the number?
27 or 25, something like that, yeah.
I guarantee you they scored 27 points per game. Whatever the number is that they have to hit, they will hit. But 27 points per game is what? That's like the 90th ranked offense in college football? Like that's not even good. So we obviously know Lincoln Riley's track record with defenses. They had the one defense, I think, what was that, 2017 or 2018 that was ranked like 40th at Oklahoma or something? And they're like, hey,
early on. It was like
our defense doesn't suck this year. Mm-hmm. But you saw them go right back to having like the 90th, 80th ranked defense in the country. So it's hard to bet on USC and Lincoln Riley's team having a good defense, but you know the way they're recruiting at USC, like they're going to have good players. Iowa doesn't have good players on offense. Like I don't know how they're suddenly going to just change their entire identity and start scoring points offensively.
On the plus side, though, I'm actually going to go Iowa here. I think the defense. I think Lincoln is gonna just give up on defense. I think he's just gonna say, "I'm gonna just bank on this Heisman quarterback and a bunch of stars at the playmaker skill position spots." And then,
well, what's the barometer here? Is a top 20 defense, top 20 offense?
No, that's never gonna happen.
We're talking top 50 defense, top 50 offense.
I would say top 50 defense or top 50 offense. And I actually think it's still Iowa to top 50 offense is more likely than USC cracking top 50 in their defense. All 5 starters back on the offensive line for Iowa from a season ago. Cade McNamara coming in there, who we have seen a competent offense from Cade McNamara at Michigan. Look, he wasn't the guy to get them over the hump. Maybe it's not even J.J. McCarthy. But the dude still guided Michigan to a really successful offensive season and got them to the college football playoff. He's now at Iowa. I look at this with Johnson in the backfield, who led their team in rushing a season ago. They dipped in the defense is still going to be electric. They're not going to turn the ball over. I think there's a path where they go from 18.7 points a game, I think they were averaging last year. I could see upper 20s, maybe 30s if everything goes right with that group. If the defense forced a lot of turnovers like that defense did a couple years ago and the offense is a little bit competent, there's a contract incentive here for Brian Ferentz to do so. Not a stiff competition. Guess what USC has to deal with every week? Elite quarterback play. Guess what you don't have to deal with every week for Iowa's offense? You're not going to deal with the best of the best week over week. You can improve. We've seen good Iowa offenses in the past. I really haven't seen a good Lincoln Riley offense in a long time. At least we've seen it for Iowa. I'm going to go Iowa here. I wouldn't bet on either, but if I had to go with one, I think I'm more cautiously optimistic about Iowa.
Yeah, the quarterback point, that's a fair point because USC is going to face some good offenses next year. But in the Big Ten, Iowa's going to be facing some really good defenses. So it kind of goes both ways. I just feel like Iowa is just, it feels like that's their identity. I don't know if they know how to be good at offense. At USC, we've seen them be good at defense before. I don't know. We haven't seen a Lincoln Riley team be good at defense very often, but I don't know. I have more faith in USC than Iowa. And also, before we get any hate mail in the comments, Ole Miss went 8-4 and then lost the bowl game, went 8-5. So they went 4-4 in the SEC. But yeah, I said they went 6-6. Yeah. So that was wrong.
Iowa, Matt Green, I got something for you. In 2020, averaged 31 points a game, top 40 offense.
Okay.
I've seen it. They can do
it.
That's fair. I just wouldn't bet on it, but I'm going Iowa over USC here. Florida avoids 3 straight losing seasons for the first time in forever, or FSU makes the college football playoff. What do you think is more likely, Matt Green?
I would definitely say Florida avoids a 3rd straight losing season. I would say that's more likely. Just because Florida State making the playoff, that's a jump.
People are talking about it though. It's almost a guarantee where if all you have to do is beat Clemson and you're in the CFP. That's how it seems like people are talking about this Seminoles team.
That is how people are talking about them, but it's since when is Florida State at a point where you can just pencil in the wins versus the inferior teams and then just it's just going to come to that toss-up game? Anyone's been able to beat this team the last few years. Do they have Syracuse on the schedule? Syracuse is giving Florida State some embarrassing losses, but I definitely think Florida State's going to be a good team this year. Florida is another team that Florida State will have to play to get to the playoff, but Florida's schedule makes me, kind of hesitant here because neither of these things, it's possible neither of these things happen, right? Mm-hmm. So Florida's schedule is very possible if they do miss a bowl game, and they could be, maybe even improved from what they were a year ago and still miss a bowl game because it is a pretty tough schedule. But Florida State being good enough to actually make the playoff and like go through their season really with if they get through their season with one loss essentially is they're going to be in the playoff most likely, and it's hard to pencil them in to do that.
Yeah, and I just am I'm not going to do it, Matt Green. Do you know where I could see it? At Pitt just feels like a Florida State loss. No, Pitt loves doing this to everybody. Like, that's a Pitt favorite. I could absolutely see Pitt ruining FSU's college football playoff season. Is just that game at home. Also, are we penciling them in beating LSU back-to-back?
Oh, yeah. I totally forgot about LSU.
Are we penciling them in to win at Florida and beat Florida in back-to-back years? Florida will have more talent than Florida State in this game. Florida State's not in the blue chip ratio. They're still kind of ahead of schedule. Part of why Florida's getting a bunch of benefit of the doubt here is Jordan Travis is awesome, right? Benson's awesome running back. They cleaned up in the portal. Jared Verse is one of the best edge guys all around in just college football. Like, they have a lot of top-end talent. Not the deepest. I'm also not picking them over Clemson. Clemson people have gone too far the other way, where it's like it's FSU's time, and I'm like, Garrett Riley was a really good sneaky hire. They adjusted pretty well this offseason. They still are loaded on the defensive side of the ball. Cade Klubnik is still probably going to be pretty awesome with this group. Will Shipley showed a lot last year. He's probably going to be a Heisman candidate for them this upcoming year. Like, Clemson, I think, is going to be pretty solid and a CFP favorite and one of the 5 to 7 best teams in college football next year. I don't see it yet. I think Florida State's not ready. And I think Florida... Look, the 5.5 is scary, but I think there's a much more obvious path to Florida getting 6 wins than Florida State making the CFP. I think I would be pretty floored if if Florida State made the CFP, and I wouldn't be at all surprised if Florida still found a way to get 6-6, 7-5, something like that.
Yeah, exactly. Like Florida State, like I don't want to just poo-poo on their breakthrough 2022 season. Like, they had a good year, but like they beat a lot of bad teams down the stretch to kind of create this off-season buzz. So it's like, it's just, I feel like people just are obsessed with certain brands, and when certain brands show a sign of life, we really believe in it. And that's kind of Tennessee is kind of one of those. It's like people are just waiting for like, oh, Tennessee, they're big time. Like, oh yeah, once they're back, they're legit. Like, whenever Miami is good at all, everyone's like, oh, Miami's back. Texas is back. Like, we do this all the time. And Florida State feels like one of those teams that, like, oh, Florida State, yeah, it's only a matter of time till they're back to being a powerhouse, because that's how it always was the whole time we've been alive, basically. But, like, what makes them that much better than, like, an NC State from a couple years ago? Like, NC State had some buzz, coming into 2021, or was it 2022? And they were fine. I think one of the years Devin Leary got hurt. Things went wrong, but it's like that's kind of where Florida State is. That like one key injury, and yeah, they might be a 3 or 4 loss team. Like it's interesting how quickly they've become, like you're saying, like Clemson. If they beat Clemson, they're going to the playoff. And I even forgot LSU was on the schedule. It's like that's 2 losses. You basically have to. And also, like, there's no mulligan. Like, Clemson, because we know the ACC division so well, if you lose to Clemson, you're not gonna win the Atlantic, so you're not gonna get to the ACC championship. So you have to be.
Wait, I thought they got rid of them this year. I don't think they have divisions this year in the ACC.
Are you sure?
ACC division's gone. I think they are, because I think the SEC is there, but I think they're gone this year. Let me double check. ACC division.
That would change things a little bit, because then if you lose to Clemson, you can at least beat them back like that. I feel like that at least.
Yes, it's gone. The divisions are gone this season.
In 2023? Okay, yeah. So I mean that does increase their chances a little bit. But then they have to beat LSU in that scenario and maybe lose to Clemson.
I just don't think they're getting the benefit of the doubt as a 2-loss team.
No, I don't think there's any chance. As a 1-loss team with LSU and Clemson on the schedule, then whoever you beat in the ACC championship, a 1-loss Florida State is getting in the playoff. Yeah. I don't know that this team. I definitely wouldn't bet on this team navigating the schedule. And we're not even, like you said, we're not even talking about at Pittsburgh, at Florida, Miami at home, at Boston College. Like, who the hell knows? Like, Florida State has not been taking care of business the last few years.
Absolutely. This one might surprise you. The final one here as we wrap up here on this Wednesday edition of the Full Ride, Matt Green. The best new SEC quarterback will end up being who next season? Who do you think has the best statistical season among all the new faces that are going to be under center in the SEC next year?
Do you have a list of the names here that to refresh the listeners, or do you just want me to just go with it?
Just go. Let me see if I can pull it up real quick.
So I'm thinking we got Devin Leary, we got Graham Mertz.
Hold on, let me just get it in front of me so I can so we don't don't overlap here. Okay, we've got probably, let's go Ty Simpson / Jaden Milroe, Payton Thorne, Graham Mertz, Carson Beck, AJ Swan will still be under center for Vanderbilt. Devin Leary, Joe Milton. We'll say Ole Miss still stays with Jackson Dart. And
I think that's Spencer Sanders for sure.
Okay, well, we'll throw in that, but then Brady Cook's probably starting for Mizzou. Connor Weigman for
Don't sleep on Brady Cook, my guy.
Brutal.
No.
What a weird quarterback room, by the way. Sam Horn, Brady Cook, Jake Garcia in that quarterback room right now. It's a weird one. But of that list, Matt Green, who do you think has the best season of all the newcomers there?
I think Spencer Sanders is a really sneaky answer that could happen.
You're not going to do that.
I'm not going to do that, but I'm just saying, in Lane Kiffin's offense, he's a dual threat guy. I just think I think Matt Corral put up some good numbers for Lane Kiffin as well. I think I got to go Carson Beck on this one because Georgia just feels like so plug and play ready for any quarterback that Carson Beck's a guy who just knows this system so well. He's been waiting his turn. I don't feel like you wait around this long if you can't play at this level. You know what I mean? I think lots of times you transfer after maybe 2 years because you're okay, I need to go somewhere else for playing time. I think this guy knows he can play at Georgia. All we really saw was mop-up duty last year, but he always looked good in the little bit we have seen of him. And for it to be a open competition, 0 career starts among this quarterback room, for it to really be this quiet makes you think Carson Beck, it's not even a question that he's the guy. And so I think Carson Beck is – I think he's going to step in. Mike Bobo's going to pick up where Monken left off. And I think Carson Beck – it's hard to judge statistically because are we playing fantasy sports statistics? Because in that case, I don't think Georgia's going to be playing – I don't think Carson Beck's going to be playing a lot of fourth quarters next year. You know what I mean? I think you're going to see a lot more blowouts. For one, Georgia's going to be really good. But I think the schedule is also – really weak for the most part. So it's hard to judge stats wise, but I think, we can judge for ourselves how he's playing. And I think Carson Beck is, as far as the newcomer starting quarterbacks, I think he's going to be the best of the group.
Interesting. I went back and forth on this for a little bit because Carson Beck, I think is a good one. I'll stay away from that one. And part of me is don't be dumb. Don't walk away from the Ty Simpson one where it's are we going to do this? There is a part of me. There's not a strong part, but there is 5% of me that's you could still see Alabama's quarterback, whoever it ends up being the best of this group, where there is something to the Nick Saban offense, overwhelms whatever Tommy Rees is bringing in. The talent's better at receiver. The offensive line's better. I guess there's still a path. I'm not going to do that, but I hesitated. Payton Thorne is actually my sneaky one, where we've seen quality play from Payton Thorne in the Big Ten. It's not like he's coming in from a G5 school where he didn't play anybody. He's coming in from Michigan State. He's played in big games. I think that was a sneaky big get for Auburn, but I was listening to Nathan King on 247 on with Bud Elliott for Summer School, the Cover 3 podcast. I don't know if you listened to that this week, but something that Nathan pointed out is that I don't think any Auburn quarterback has ever ended up being the starting quarterback when they miss spring ball. So Payton Thorne being a late transfer and then being the starter would be kind of unprecedented for Auburn, and he's just missed a lot of time. So I'm curious if that ends up.
Was Cam Newton, was he around for spring?
I think the last time it happened was Nick Marshall, apparently.
Okay.
And in that case, it worked out pretty well because Nick Marshall went to a national title game, which is kind of wild. UGA legend Nick Marshall. So that's a big part of it for me. I think Payton Thorne, I'm just going to do it. I think Payton Thorne is actually, with the Hugh Freeze offense, with how much help they got in the portal, like they got both their tackles from Tulsa. I think their offensive line will be a lot better this year than what we saw last year. The upgrade from Robbie Ashford, who was like completing less than 50% of his passes last year, I mean, I think Payton Thorne is just going to be a quality, really good. Like, everyone wants to say Devin Leary, and it's like Liam Cohen's back and blah, blah, blah. He can't stay healthy, one. And two, like, we're overblowing what Will Levis was 2 years ago. Like, Kentucky's offense wasn't blowing the doors off people with Liam Cohen. It's still Stoops' blueprint all over it. They were 39th in passing. Like, it wasn't like this was just a Heisman-type year for Will Levis, and they're going to put Devin Leary in a position to be one of the premier quarterbacks. He's going to be kind of a game. There's still, the identity is still Stoopsian with Kentucky. So that's not my pick. And I just can't do it with Joe Milton. I'm not putting I just can't. I'm not there. So when I go there, Payton Thorne, Hugh Freeze, it just doesn't matter. Malik Willis, whoever it is, he finds a way. Caden Salter coming in there last year, their offense was still good. It just feels like Hugh Freeze is one of those guys and one of those coaches, and we've seen it in the SEC, where they're going to have playmakers. They did well in the portal. Jarquez Hunter, it's a really good running back, sneaky, underrated, really good running back in this conference. I think their offense is going to be sneaky good, and I think Payton Thorne is actually going to have a really good year, maybe the best statistical year of any of the new faces in the conference.
I think I lost track of how many times you said sneaky, but I'll let it slide.
You got sneaky in the brain here. I'm recording it late. It's 12:30 Eastern time.
Sneaky on the brain. But yeah, I don't hate that. It's interesting to me that you had this much more faith in Hugh Freeze's offense than you do in Josh Heupel's offense.
It's not that. I don't know if Joe, like, I've seen bits and pieces of Joe Milton in this offense. Like, it's not like he's a brand new face. Like, Joe Milton has played a lot of snaps. I mean, he didn't throw.
So is he not a newcomer? Is he not on this list?
He was
part of the list, though, right?
He's part of the list, but he's such a weird, mercurial guy for me that, like, I can't even commit to him getting 12 games. Like, he's injury prone. Like, I don't know if his body will hold up if the offensive line struggles. If he gets hit and takes some bad hits, like, I'm still just not convinced that we don't see Nico at some point. So it's just really hard for me. Like, two things can be true. I trust Josh Heupel with this offense unequivocally, and whoever is under center, I think he'll figure it out and he'll put the best guy there, and this will be a top 10 offense again. I just don't know if it will be Joe Milton for the full year. I don't know if Joe Milton will, A, stay healthy, and I don't know if, B, Joe Milton doesn't have the brain farts or he doesn't struggle against some good teams and they go to Nico because Nico's ahead of schedule and just looks like he's ready to be the guy. Like, I'm not there. I don't know if I can fully buy in on Joe Milton. I believe in the talent is all there. I can't predict Joe Milton to be the best newcoming quarterback in the SEC. I think the offense will be elite once again. I just don't know if it will be with Joe Milton.
I mean, it's got to struggle at some point, though, right? If you're going to transition away from Joe Milton, it's got to see some sort of struggles. And
right,
then you
but
go to Nico, I guess.
The running game, they can still run the ball really well, and I think that's what's going to happen too. I think Tennessee's going to run the ball a lot more this year than they did a year ago. Jalen Wright is a freak, and they have a lot more talent in the backfield at this point. True freshman. Cam Seldon, I think, will be involved. I think it's going to be more of taking the ball out of Joe Milton's hands and kind of being a more balanced offense than what we've seen the last couple of years. So I don't know. My gut just tells me he doesn't have the best statistical season. I would be pretty surprised if Joe Milton has the best statistical season of any quarterback in the SEC next year. I think Carson Beck, I would predict to have a better statistical season than Joe.
Yeah, and Devin Leary does feel like a candidate, but there's just something. It's like, which version of Devin Leary is the legit version? Yeah. Like, we don't know. And I also feel like obligated to say, because we haven't even mentioned his name, Graham Mertz at Florida. Are we completely writing off Graham Mertz? Like, there's no chance at all that that Florida or Graham Mertz, this offense is looking any good?
Nah, I'm not. I mean, you can.
I think there's a chance, and there's a chance that Florida's offense is improved, but not because Graham Mertz. Maybe he's managing the game and they're running the ball well and he's efficient, but I don't see him being like any sort of stats, putting up any sort of stats. They could just have like an efficient complementary passing game because they should be riding that running game in 2023.
That's fair. 2020 Liberty's 19th in scoring. 2021 they're where'd they go? 25th. You just go through it. Hugh Freeze offenses, it doesn't matter where he goes, he's going to put up points.
Headline of this podcast: Chase Thomas, Hugh Freeze superior to Josh Heupel.
No, I just think it's just going to be that bump where they surprise some folks, and I think they're going to have a pretty pleasant year one. I'm an Auburn stock buyer going into the next couple of years for them. Do I think Hugh Freeze makes it for like 10 years at Auburn? No. Do I think this flames out eventually?
Just landed a big-time linebacker who Georgia legitimately wanted out of Tuskegee. So, I mean, you got to win some recruiting battles.
Oh, he's going to kill it there. Like, they have a great recruiting group. They brought in their wide receiver coach. They pulled in. He was an Auburn alum, and he was somewhere else, and he's a pretty good recruiter. He has a very strong staff. Able to keep Cadillac was huge from a year ago. No, his staff is strong all across the board. So I'm not worried about Auburn recruiting at this point. And they got good AD bringing him in, Cohen from Mississippi State. Auburn feels relatively stable, and they're in a talent-rich area, and they should be one of the 10 to 15 best football programs in the country year over year. Like, there's really no excuse. They're one of those programs where, like Florida, they walk into a top 5 class. They were awful last year, and it doesn't matter. Kids want to go to Florida. They're right there. Many talented kids live right there.
That's true, but I don't think that gives Billy Napier enough credit for the job he's doing.
They got
recruiting, because Florida's got a lot of competition. They got a lot of competition in the state of Florida too, and Alabama. A lot of those guys are going to Alabama and Georgia and Clemson and Ohio State.
Kids want to go to Florida. It's a cool school. It's close to home. Kids want a reason to go to Florida and Florida State and Miami. They want to stay close to home.
No, that's true. I mean, that's definitely an advantage they have. But they're landing some dudes out of Georgia this class too. Yeah. Florida is, but I think Auburn is just, they're an interesting one. It's funny how some hires just fit. Mm-hmm. Like, we all were thinking they should have hired Hugh Freeze back in 2020?
Yeah.
Whenever they hired Harsin. Yeah. It was like, he just fit. Like, we just do it. Yeah. And they had to go down the wrong road, but it led back to Hugh Freeze.
You can also just make the case that they should have just wrote it out with Gus Malzahn. Like, dude can still coach. Like, just ride it out. Like, Gus, still top 10 coach in the sport, doing good stuff.
You throw around this top 10 coach thing way too much. Gus Malzahn's not top 30.
What?
No, we got to make a list, but I don't. He's not top 20.
18-9 at UCF since he got there. He's 94-47.
What was UCF doing before he got there? They were winning 10 games every year.
Twice. He's won the Sun Belt. He's won the West twice. He's been to the national.
But when
title
I think
game.
about,
he was the OC when they won a national title. What does the guy do?
When I think about a good coach, it's a guy who's like, teams are at least like, you know what you're getting every year. Like, even like a Kirk Ferentz who's like so flawed offensively. Clearly there's something Kirk Ferentz is doing, producing big old offensive linemen, tight ends, and having solid defensive play. Like, Auburn is just one of those teams under Gus Malzahn. You had no idea what you're getting year in, year out. Like, the offense was kind of gimmicky. Like, every quarterback just got worse and worse the longer they were in the system. Like, he wasn't like the worst coach ever, but I think you're just like tired of that experience. Like, and a lot of it, is having to go against Nick Saban and Kirby Smart. It's like, it's not easy at all. But I think Gus Malzahn, they had enough. Like, he had time. Like, he had 7-8 years there. Like, it's not like they gave him a quick exit or anything. Honestly, he was probably close to getting fired before that run in 2017 when he beat Georgia and Alabama back to back, and he got the extension and everything.
He almost went 3 for 3 without if a Kerryon Johnson injury doesn't happen. Like, do they go 3 for 3 and beat Bama, Georgia, Bama, Georgia over the course of a month?
Kerryon Johnson's shoulders the reason they lost 28-7. Get out of here.
That was a big loss. Kerryon Johnson.
No, he was. He was. I think the SEC Offensive Player of the Year that year.
I was going to say, you're discounting how good Kerryon Johnson was. Like, them losing Kerryon in that game, that was huge.
No, for sure. He was dynamic, without a doubt. But Georgia,
throw them a bone. Things are good. Throw Auburn a bone. They were the best team in the conference that year.
Hey, I was actually watching that game. It came on SEC Network recently, and that was a monumental game.
Yeah.
The DeAndre Swift.
Did you just catch a fly?
Exclamation point. Yeah, and fly just flew right in my face.
That's a good one for the YouTube folks. YouTube.com/Chase. Well, Matt Green, that is all I've got. That was a fun exercise. What did you think?
It was good. I had a very loyal listener of the show ask me how he could watch this show on YouTube. And I didn't know what to tell him, Chase Thomas. What did I tell him?
YouTube.com/Chase Thomas Podcast. Over 1,001 subs. Doing really well on the YouTube page. Just go to youtube.com/Chase Thomas Podcast. Even just type it in Chase Thomas Podcast on YouTube. That easy. All the full episodes, clips, shorts, all that good stuff each and every day on the YouTube page.
There you go, man.
He doesn't need to go to you. He just needs to go to Mama Green, because she knows. Your mom's up to. She knows. Like, that's who you need to go to. All the loyal listeners who are in Matt's orbit, just hit up Mrs. Green there. She knows what's going on.
Very true.
Matt Green, always a pleasure, and I will talk to you next week.
Yes, sir.
Well done, nephew. Chase Thomas Podcast. Hell yeah.